What did I sacrifice? Nothing that I missed.
I didn't feel like I sacrificed anything.
I don't think I sacrificed anything. I really don't.
We weren't heroes. We had a job to do. Nobody considered himself a hero. No. But I have no regrets.
It was another era, another time when our nation and its allies were united in a deep-seated desire for the preservation of ideals. A clear conscience and a strong resolve inspired all who served and defined their goal.
Half of the bomber crews that I was flying with never made it. The average crew didn't get beyond 17 missions before they were shot down, or where the plane blew up, or they exploded on takeoff, or whatever. I think the people that paid the price were those who had arms shot off, or left as crippled, or who were killed by combat activity. I can't really say the war cost me a lot.
In a war with so many names, Iwo Jima, Omaha Beach, Battle of the Bulge, an airbase known as Pantanella lies all but forgotten. From this place in southern Italy near the Adriatic coast, the 464th and 465th Bomb Groups, divisions of the 15th Air Force, encamped on adjoining hills above the Afonto River. From here they flew hazardous missions to targets with names more familiar, such as Ploesti, Blachhammer, and Anzio, and contributed in no small fashion, yet in an extremely short period of time, to the Allied effort of the Second World War. The men who lived a lifetime in this place can now look back with pride on their accomplishments, their hardships, and their duty. For most who enlisted in the 15th Air Force, it all began after highly intensive training at facilities such as McCook Air Force Base in Nebraska. From this initial and exhaustive preparation, these eager crews embarked across the Atlantic to engage in the largest war in history. While some made the 21-day journey on Liberty ships such as the Asa Gray, most flight crews arrived by air in their new B-24 Liberator bombers.
They gave our group 56 brand new airplanes and said, "You guys are trained. You don't need any more training. Let's take them over there to Italy and see if you can give the Third Reich a little bad time, you know."
Many of the young pilots had logged only a minimum amount of flight time. Their average age was 23. Most crew members had never flown over water, and many had never left their hometowns. Some were barely 18 when they departed for the Mediterranean theater. Others lied about their age in order to serve. The first stop in their transatlantic flight was often the Azore Islands.
I'd never flown over an ocean or anything, but I had a good navigator. I had faith in him, Barney Russell. I called Barney. I said, "Hey, when are we supposed to be there?" He said, "We should be there now." Boy, I better scan. So I looked down and I saw the water, and then I saw a little opening in the clouds. So I took a dive right down through, and that got me in the lower level. And there was the island that we're supposed to land on. So I did it, and you never had a man so scared in his life as I was then, because that was a steel mat runway out over the water. So it really made a noise. In fact, one of the gunners, the ball gunner, had got a hold of the window on the side windows were open. All he could see was water around it. We were on this runway then, water here and water there. He thought we crashed. He started climbing out the window to swim ashore. Two of the guys got a hold of him and pulled him back in. So that's how scared the guys back got.
The initial leg of the trip placed these men in Marrakesh, French West Africa, and eventually in Udine, Tunisia, where they were to wait for the completion of their base in southern Italy. Just east of these temporary bases lay Benghazi, Libya. On August 1st, 1943, only a few months before the 15th Air Force arrived overseas, 177 B-24 Liberators of the 8th and 9th Air Force left the Benghazi area to conduct a low-altitude bombing attack on the 7 oil refineries in and around Ploesti, Romania. Facilities such as these throughout Europe would become a main focus for the work of the 15th. Ploesti, however, was unique. It alone produced 35% of Germany's oil and aviation fuel. The flight to this perilous target was complicated by foul weather and navigational problems. The air crews faced more than 230 anti-aircraft guns that surrounded the area. There were countless instances of bravery. One author described the mission as flying into the mouth of hell. A total of 532 airmen were killed, captured, or listed missing in action. 54 aircraft were destroyed, and extensive damage was inflicted on an additional 53 planes. The strategy of low-altitude attacks was intended for surprise, but influenced by the extremely high damage and loss encountered on August 1st, all successive heavy bomber missions to Ploesti and most other targets were conducted from high altitudes. While considered a military success, this raid took a grave toll. 5 airmen received the Medal of Honor, the most for any single action during World War II and in the history of American military aviation. The 1,300-mile round trip from Benghazi to the target greatly contributed to the difficulty of the mission. This distance was considerably shortened when a strategic push of Allied military force through Sicily progressed on to southern Italy and allowed for the creation of heavy bomber bases in such areas as Manduria, Lecce, San Pangrazio, and Grottaglia. As the push progressed, the 15th Air Force built its strength by establishing bases throughout the surrounding farmland and vineyards of the Foggia Plain. Bases for the B-17 bomb groups, as well as fighter squadrons, were formed slightly north of the Liberator concentrations, which assembled in areas such as Venosa, Cerignola, and Pantanella.
The Germans were slowly being pushed up the peninsula. It was a tough campaign. But every once in a while, 25 miles from the German line, we'd build an air base. And the 25 miles put us just out of artillery range.
And then as soon as the field was ready in Pantanella, I believe we were one of the first to arrive there in April or May of 44.
They took us from Naples on 6x6s over to our field. The field was not ready. So they put out the tents up on the hill and did all that good stuff. There wasn't anything there, and they put everybody on guard duty. And at night, and you couldn't see doodly squat, they gave us little old carbines, which some of us knew how to shoot, I guess, and some didn't. But anyway, we did go around the perimeter at night, and you didn't know, you couldn't see, and you'd holler out, here you're in a strange country. Oh, and by the way, you could see the big guns going off not far from us, and you could hear the noise of the fight. That wasn't far ahead of us when we got there.
And then being amongst the first to arrive, I was fortunate enough to be one of the first to complete the number of missions required to permit me to be returned to the States.
I remember my first flight was with a different crew. They needed a gunner on one of the other flights, and I went along, and it happened to be what we call a milk run, in which we didn't run into any opposition. So that was my so-called baptism of fire. First mission was practically nothing. It was just like a practice mission. I know we did bomb some place up in northern Italy, I think it was. And very little flak and no fighters, so it was like a practice mission.
My first mission there, August 20th, 1944, was a double to Tuskegee oil refinery in Poland. Saw some flak in the distance. It looked harmless. Considered a milk run. Burned a lot.
I remember coming back from it, and my crew members were waiting me anxiously and say, "Lee, how was this? What happened?" So I described it, and I said it was simple, nothing to it. But internally, I was very happy to be home, you know.
Home for Lee Engelhorn and for the 465th and 464th Bomb Groups was to be Pantanella, Italy, just 50 miles southwest of Foggia, where the 15th Air Force had established its headquarters. The bomb groups were encamped on 2 adjoining hills overlooking the airfield, which was situated in the valley below.
You come up to the top of the hill, and that's where you had the tent area.
Heated by stoves made of spare parts, and powered by the readily available yet highly volatile aviation fuel, tents at Pantanella housed the 2 bomb groups until they were replaced by huts, crafted by hand from the porous volcanic tufa rock which was common to the region. When not flying missions and out of harm's way, the airmen's life on base was quite routine.
The life at Pantanella, as I recollect, was just one of intermittent periods of boredom or self-entertainment. We built an officers' club, as I remember, and installed a bar, and we did gambling, poker playing. It were almost a continuous poker game. You could enter into any hour of the day or night. There was always someone playing poker.
We built this 3-room house down by the line. We built it so we would be close to the planes, and we didn't have to worry about getting rides and go back up the hill up there where we camped. So we built this. We very seldom ever went up there because we had our liquor, we had our food. We traded cigarettes and stuff for eggs and potatoes, and we fried and cooked K-rations. And
I personally, I was abnormal, I guess. I love Spam, and I love the sea rations and stuff. I like whatever they fed me. And they'd heat them up in the kitchen. No, there wasn't much cooking going on.
We needed a piano in our forthcoming officers' club. So we tested an airplane by flying it back to Africa and stealing a 6x6 truck and commandeering a piano out of a building next to the provost's office, stuffed it in a bomb bay and flew it back to Italy. And of course this was a very serious mission, you know. You had to test it thoroughly, and the piano worked just perfectly. So I was, in some respects, known as a dog robber. A dog robber was someone that went out and made a trade, one thing or another. We'd trade some English motorcycles with a Navy base someplace for cases of beer, which we didn't have. And then we would take an airplane up to 24,000 feet for a couple hours to test it with the beer, and it would get cold. A lot of, very serious military operations, you understand.
Yet in the back of one's mind was the ever-present purpose, the next mission.
The thing that sticks most vividly in my memory is the briefing room. The top was like a barn, a low barn, and you go down long steps, and they had excavated it, and at the far end was a screen, and you sat on cases that bomb fins came in, and that's where we went down and went, that's where we're going today.
We would be briefed and told where the mission was going and what was going to happen, what the cloud cover was near the target, if any, and what to expect or what might happen and that kind of thing, and what the plan was. And when we'd go down the bomb run, that kind of thing. And that was often entertaining because my radio operator, a very nice guy, George Rudat, he had a wonderful feigning act, and he'd always sit on the end of one of the benches, and if a really tough target like Black Hammer was mentioned by the intelligence officers where we'd go, and you do a perfect feint right off into the aisle. It was good for general hilarity. Probably a little tense hilarity too there.
Regardless of rank, position, or duty status, the pressure of the job, the apprehension of the next mission directly affected the way in which each man dealt with the strain of combat, and often their connection with other members of the group.
We used to have people come down to the line and eat with us. We built that building down there, and we'd invite crews to come down and have dinner with us and drink with us and that stuff. And they never tried to remember their names. You'd hear names, but you didn't try to remember them. Yeah, we stood there and watched the planes come off, and we knew when they was coming back, and we stood and tried to watch them come back. You know, and some of them didn't. I was lucky. I had 3 planes, and they always come back, and they always went. I was lucky.
So many chances for error, so many chances for collisions, for crashes of all kinds.
Not all accidents were caused by mechanical failure or human error. The unexpected was a reality of war.
Now, I don't know if anybody else has told you this, but 2 bombers blew up on takeoff. They narrowed it down to 1 airplane mechanic. Somehow or other, the Germans had gotten to him and were giving him the equipment and $1,000 to put it in the landing gear.
They are quite certain that someone on the ground crew wired the top bomb in the forward bomb bay had been wired to the nose wheel door switch, so that when the door closed and the light went on, the bomb went off.
The incident there's nothing fortunate about it. It killed 20 good men, and fortunately it didn't kill anybody else. But the military narrowed it down to who was working on these 2 planes at this particular time. They came up with 1 name, and he confessed, and unlike in civilian life, the next day he was shot by court-martial, which is right, I think. Yeah.
Enemy infiltration was rare, but there was no doubt that the dangers of getting a fully loaded B-24 off the runway to a target and back again were all too real. The volatility of the B-24 was obvious. Equipped for missions with a crew of 10, every mishap was a potential catastrophe. Some air crews were lost before engaging the enemy or even before reaching altitude. Such occurrences caught the eye of every airman, whether on the flight line or up on the hill at base camp.
And we could see the runways from where our tent was, and I don't know what caused it, but he was just about at liftoff.
We're just standing there, and he gets up about 50 foot and it lets go.
I don't know whether he had 8 or 10 500-pound bombs and 2,700 gallons of gasoline, and it all blew up at one time.
But we took off running and running all at once. It seemed like everybody just stopped. All at once, we all just stopped. We scattered, and we just stopped, and we turned around and we looked, and all you could see is little bits of stuff just flying all over this place. I mean, it completely demolished that plane. It was loaded.
I saw that airplane blow up, and the concussion from that the explosion, even though I was, like 1.5 miles away.
The funny thing about that plane going up, they heard it up on the line, and some of the people seen it up there, and some of the officers that was standing out there mess, and they seen it go, the ones that wasn't flying. Some of the enlisted people heard it and seen it. We didn't feel or hear anything, really, because I don't know what it was. Like I said, it was about 50 feet up in the air, and this thing went up, and you just see it go up, so the implosion and explosion, we didn't really hear a lot of noise. It wasn't deafening to us. And looking back, there was no flash to this either. I don't understand all this with all the gas and all the bombs on that thing. I don't know.
To this day, I don't know what caused that. I don't know if it was sabotage or whether it was sparks or electrical sparks or static electricity that got into a fuel cell in some manner.
And so there's 10 people gone, you know, in front of your eyes. So I mean, I don't know what they did. They come down maybe and tried to find, but there was nothing left. Nothing left.
Never did I make a takeoff or complete a landing or go back and check in at home base without a sigh of relief that we'd made it. I just thank God that we were able to come through that. I especially am thankful that I brought my crew over those targets 35 times and brought every one of them safely home. My navigator was killed over there. He volunteered to fly with another crew, and that day they went down.
It's something very, very sad to think of these young, brave men submitting themselves to this kind of circumstance and paying the price.
But as far as emotion, again, we were young, and emotion, I guess there wasn't any. I don't think there was. Now there is. Now there is, but not then. Okay, that's how I feel. Yeah.
But I tell you, it got a little tougher each time we went up.
A B-24 loaded with 6,000 or 7,000 pounds of bombs, with flak jackets, with machine guns, with ammunition, with oxygen equipment, with all the rest. It was an enormously heavy plane. I never made a takeoff without wondering if I was going to get that thing off the runway before the end of the runway came up. Those runways were not all that long overseas.
We couldn't get the plane up. It did not want to fly. It kept babying it, trying to, and the wheels was hitting the ground, and like that. And finally, we'd pull a gear and run out of the runway and got into this wheat field, and was combining wheat over all 4 engines. I asked my Mike, I said, "Are we in combine business this morning?" He said, "I'm doing everything I can to get this thing up out of that." I said, "You'd better hurry because you're gonna hit that hill out there if you ain't careful." We got it up. And you look death right straight in the eye every day, every trip, and grin and bear it. You can't, there ain't no use to sit down and cry. There's no use to try to hide from it. There's no place to hide. You've got to look it right in the face, take whatever it gives you.
The inherent danger to B-24 crews was prevalent in every phase of each mission. The events which Robert Wingfield encountered early in his tour with the 15th Air Force are testament to both the peril and the unexpected.
May 2nd, 44, going to Parma where they make Parmesan cheese. Yeah, We'd had that big meeting the night before, what to do if the lead ship bails out, down and out to the right. The lead ship would go down and out to the right because 6 airplanes, and 6 airplanes. You wouldn't hit anybody, you know? And so, that second mission, I didn't lead the group, a classmate of mine did, named Shoemaker. Colonel Bonner was with him, and they saw the flak going into Parma. So he got scared and jerked the airplane off of autopilot and almost ran into me. Well, I had to make a decision. Is he dropping out of the lead, you know? So I mushed up and moved over him, slowed down a little bit. Then his other wingman came behind and under me and hit me.
The B-24 flying wing to Shoemaker was known as Southern Gal. The plane had veered from its appointed position in the box, which caused the mid-air collision. Southern Gal's tail section struck the nose turret of Robert Wingfield's Liberator. impaling one of its twin rudders on the front of his aircraft.
Well, the rudder was kind of like a fork in a hot dog. It was hanging on my nose turret. The guns were sticking through it. And that thing was, like I said, 12 feet high and 9 feet wide. So it's a pretty big thing on the nose.
As a result of the impact, Wingfield's plane, christened Big Fat Mama, was flipped upside down.
It tumbled, and the tail came off, and the tail gunner in that airplane, where it hit me, it broke loose, and he tumbled alone in the turret on the way down all by himself, yeah. Yeah, he didn't hit the ground with the airplane, he just hit by himself. That must have been terrible, yeah.
All members of the Southern Gal's crew were killed, with the exception of the navigator, who was somehow able to bail out. The fate of Wingfield's crew now hung in the balance.
I rang the alarm bell when we were upside down falling. So I had 4 guys bail out, 2 POWs, and 2 stayed with the Italian underground for 11 months and walked out.
Robert Wingfield skillfully righted his plane, navigated off the coast of Italy, and with the tail section of the Southern Gal still affixed to his nose turret, flew some 200 miles to find friendly ground on the island of Corsica. Once in the air, the B-24s departing Pantanella would rally with other bomb groups of the 15th Air Force. The rally itself was a dangerous maneuver as planes were intermeshing from many different directions. Once all the assigned aircraft were in flight, the formation, consisting of hundreds if not thousands of planes, would form up and head north to the bomb targets. It was a massive concentration of military air power not to be dismissed lightly. Heavy bombers stretched out for miles, yet grouped together with a common purpose: attack and destroy targets in Germany and the surrounding areas. The configurations formed by the aircraft for long-distance travel and attack were typically known as boxes, a term used to describe a specific grouping. It was this arrangement of planes that provided the most protection and the best use of guns in the event they should encounter the enemy. A well-formed box demanded that the pilots fly in extremely close quarters. Poorly formed boxes, and those planes separated from the group, were ideal targets for marauding German fighters.
When they called fighters, I looked out, there was a straggler, a B-24, and Me-109s were cutting him to ribbons.
Bombers are, when you attack by a fighter airplane, you're a sitting duck, You're not very safe with a fighter that can maneuver the way they did. But those fighter pilots, they didn't like to fly into because we had, 10, 50 caliber machine guns shooting at a guy coming in. So it took a little bit of guts to do that too.
If we could have seen the bullets fly, it would have scared us to death. We would have said, it's the end.
If you take 36 aircraft, each one manned with 10 50 caliber machine guns, you have 360 guns in this particular group. We weren't so defenseless.
2 Messerschmitts were attacking the plane behind us. And when they came under me, well, they were tracking and very close. They were probably within 20 feet of our plane when they came under. I mean, I had a dead shot.
Typically flying escort for these members of the 15th Air Force were fighter groups such as the renowned Checkertails of the 325th and the legendary Redtails of the Tuskegee Airmen.
And I've seen fighters from other squadrons who were just passing over, collide into each other. I saw the wing rip off of one of them in flight, in mid-flight. These are things that I witness all the time because there's plenty of action going on there, don't forget, it's starting at 4:30 in the morning, right through until sunset. There was a lot of flying going on over the combat areas.
During World War II, a rigid pattern of racial segregation prevailed. Isolated in training near Tuskegee, Alabama, nearly 1,000 African-American military aviators prepared for duty as bomber escorts in the European theater. 450 Tuskegee pilots under the command of Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. fought in the aerial war over North Africa, Sicily, and Europe. With more than 15,000 sorties and 1,500 missions to their credit, They flew cover for the 12th Tactical U.S. Army Air Force as well as the heavy bombers of the 15th.
They were a delight to fly with, because here we are on very grim missions. And I always had my radio tuned to them, and you'd hear something like this. Who dat? Who dat who say who dat? Who dat who say who dat who say dat? And then an authoritative voice would say, radio silence will be maintained. Who dat who say that?
I was a wingman, and the idea is you would just fly on the wing of the element leader or the flight leader and sort of protect him. You're scanning that area of the sky and to make sure no one gets on his tail. And you would we'd go out and fly pretty good formation, kind of loose, to be relaxed. But once you meet the bombers, then you'd get off above and off to the side, and you would just S up there to keep them in sight. And you'd also scan the sky as best you could. Make sure that there are a lot of things to do, but your focus is outside of the cockpit. Just looking. Keep your head and eyes moving, look around.
When the bombers took off, they would fly the first maybe 30 minutes unescorted because they were still over friendly territory. But from there on out, until they came back to that point again, they had to have fighter escort because German fighter squadrons were based along the way. So we would send one fighter group up to escort the bombers from mid-Italy to the Swiss border. Then they would make a U-turn and go back home and pick out targets of opportunity on the way back and use up the ammunition. The second fighter group would rendezvous with the bombers at that same point. The two fighter groups would acknowledge they see each other, right? One guy says, see you later, and the guy takes over and flies the bombers up to the next point. Next point may be southern Austria. It's a relay system. In the meantime, German fighters would be coming up trying to pick the bombers off, and our fighters would go down and chase them away.
The escort fighters, they stream in from all sides. They call SOS, and they come in from all sides. It's just a matter then of go on to the bombers as quickly as you can. If you delay too much, then they swarm in at you. Huh?
But he was shooting at us, and he came at us, still shooting at us as he made a pass from 7 o'clock position down below our airplane and out on the other side, which would have brought him out at 1 or 2 o'clock position in front of us. And when he came out of there, the two P-51s that were escorting us had picked him up, and they just came right down on top of him. And they took him right down. They just shooting their machine guns and followed him right down to the ground. And the navigator told me, he said, he blew up, he hit the ground. These P-51s had flown him right down and shot him up and flew him right down into the ground.
While the bomber crews were understandably appreciative of their escort pilots, the fighters too held great respect for the skill and commitment of the B-24 Airmen.
It just amazed me. I had so much admiration for the young pilots and the crew members in those airplanes that they kept formation and kept going through, and all these little black bursts all around them. And some of them were hit. Some did drop out. And that's where we did lose airplanes, from flak generally.
They would say, Christ, I'm glad I was flying this 51. He says, no way in hell would I sit and ride out into a target like that, because once they aligned themselves, besides they were so large and awkward, they had to stay in formation.
When even the most beautiful flight, was always spoiled by colossal danger of war. But you get hardened, after a period of time. You just, if you had a good mission, without the greatest danger, it was just a beautiful flight. You just really, you just made it again and again.
While the mission of the 15th Air Force was to strike a fatal blow to such targets as Germany's ball-bearing plants, marshalling yards, and military factories, the cities of Europe, such as Vienna, Austria, crumbled under the extreme residual damage. Bridges, palaces of fine art, institutions of higher education, and governmental buildings all fell under the weight of the Third Reich.
The Russians were pushing the Germans back. On the Eastern Front, General Patton was closing in from the west and the south.
As the Germans was pushed back, they'd take their artillery with them.
In that last week of the war, they moved thousands of anti-aircraft pieces into a much smaller area, and Linz was one of those areas. That was a railway marshalling yards where German troops were going through on the way to Berlin.
And they fortified these cities with more guns and more guns and more guns, and they were on radar, and they got better, more accuracy out of their weapons.
And man, they had defenses like you wouldn't believe.
You take the entire 15th Air Force, all the groups would be spread out over maybe 100 miles. It was a spectacular air show. They had about 1,000 bombers and maybe 1,000 fighters, and see up the flat with airplanes blowing up. You know, I knew we had to take our turn, and I thought about that, yeah.
Yet perhaps the most important targets were the oil refineries located in areas such as Ploesti and Blechhammer.
The worst target was Blechhammer.
We were shot down over the Blechhammer oil refineries.
It was a very long mission, so sometimes you'd fly over a place that would shoot some flak at you because it was way over in German-occupied Poland.
Well, Blechhammer was the most feared, I suppose. Vienna, Munich, Linz, those were all tough targets.
And they just shot the daylights out of us. I remember thinking while we were going through that, I'm going to be really furious if having flown 34 missions, I get knocked down on the very last mission. I was determined to keep that airplane in the air.
When we hit Ploesti for the first time, we turned to the target, and you look, the flak is black in front of you from the previous burst, and Al Rodman says, "Holy mackerel, look at that flak, you could walk on it."
You'd sit there and it'd say, well, the flak is intense, accurate, you could get out and walk on it. I'm hearing that in the tail. And it was frustrating, you just sat there and took it. But it was very heavy, intense, and accurate over most of the targets we bombed.
What flak is, it's a high velocity shell that has a fuse that's altitude sensitive, and it's set to go off at, say, 20,000 feet. And then it breaks into 1,000 parts that's umbrella shaped.
When you hit flak, nothing you can do about it. You hear it goes ka-roomf, ka-roomf. When you're flying, it goes ka-roomf.
If it was close, you could feel it jarred your plane, or sort of made the ride rough. Of course, you never would forget how when you ran through the flak and it hit the plane, it made a sound that you can't forget.
So we were hit over the target, Blechhammer, about 11:20 in the morning, and we got hit in the right wing fuel tanks, and the plane started burning.
I remember having to fly through guys that bailed out, above. I don't know whether we hit any of them or not. I hope not, but I remember that.
I fell free, I guess, for about a mile like a rock, because I was afraid of hitting planes underneath us. And then I pulled my chute.
The customary remark was, "I want to see some parachutes. Where the hell are the parachutes?"
When I flew through that flame on the picture that was in the Time magazine, debris from the plane was sticking right to the nose turret. One of the wings just folded right back, and it was all afire. And like I say, we flew right through it. That's when I started to pray.
This one kid was, everywhere I'd went in the States, him and I were together. He became a ball turret gunner, and we were flying wing to him the day he got shot down. His plane got a direct hit and it exploded, and it almost blew us down too. The ball turret fell out with him in it by itself. I wonder what he thought falling 30,000 feet in a turret with no conceivable way of ever getting out of it alive, because you cannot wear your chute in them. It wasn't built big enough to do that.
Lieutenant Prince was flying in the number 4 slot. He had like 60 or 80 holes in his airplane, but we didn't lose anybody. But the flak was bad.
We counted 250 holes in that airplane. It's incredible.
I counted 275 holes, lost count, and quit.
We had 300 flak holes I can remember in our airplane.
Fantastic number of holes that they found. I think it was 352. Now, I could be lying and exaggerating, but that's my memory.
Everything from a bullet hole to a hole this big around that you could walk through.
To this day, when I got out and walked around that airplane, I couldn't figure out how it stayed in the air. And I don't know yet how it was able to hang together with all these rips. There were holes like that you could throw a dog through, just torn right through the plane from one side to the other. How it hit only one man inside the plane, I don't know. One of our gunners was badly injured by a burst of shell fire. We had to leave him in Italy at the end of the war.
Even though we wore the flak suits, there were still many boys killed because of being hit by flak.
We lost a nose gunner, was killed over a mission over Vienna. A piece of flak went through his jugular vein.
Pieces of metal that went into the body.
They told me that 8 of my crew members were killed. So that was kind of hard.
We lost so many friends then. You know, you'd be at the bar one night talking to one of your close friends, and the next day he wouldn't be there. He'd been shot down.
It's surreal. You know, you're flying around in the air at 20,000 some feet, and there are a lot of black bursts around you, or some fighter aircraft careening in and out, and you know that they can do you terrible damage.
It got to the point where I more or less tried to isolate myself so that I wouldn't be friendly with anybody, because it just hurt me like I lost one of my own family, you know.
Older brother was killed as a navigator. He was dropping paratroops over the Rhine River. All the troops got out. They got a direct hit. And lo and behold, the navigator flying right on his wing took a picture of it, and I've got a picture of that.
But it was expected.
Shoot, I'm sorry.
This was the nature of the work that you were doing.
But I think flak was more dangerous to us than the fighters. At least we could shoot back at the fighters.
August 3rd, 1944. Crew members of the 465th were to encounter this day the unexpected. In an air battle which by some accounts lasted less than 2 minutes, the B-24 Liberator was to tangle with the Luftwaffe's Focke-Wulf and Me-109, taking a toll in aircraft and human lives. 8 American B-24s and 8 German planes were downed. 30 men lost their lives. The opportunity to shoot back at the fighters had been provided. Joseph Spontak, navigator of the B-24 Sugar Baby, recalls the mission.
The mission was in Friedrichshafen, and it was the Mansell aircraft factory. Our particular squadron or group was assigned to bomb the aircraft factory.
We didn't know that it was near the end of the war because we were not informed.
Aald resident, guide, and historian Gerd Leitner was 7 years of age. Yet the events of that day as his mother was preparing lunch on the family porch are present and clear.
And the bombers came like on some days. They came just over our village, making a lot of noise, but nothing else happened. After a few minutes, they disappeared.
Lee Engelhorn was manning the ball turret of the B-24 Sugar Baby on their return trip from Friedrichshafen.
We were supposed to come off the target and turn this way, but that meant going over the flak, heavy amounts of flak. Instead, our leader decided to go off this way to avoid the flak. We were isolated. The rest of the group was gone, far ahead of us, several miles ahead of us, and we were scattered.
And at this day, they came back at about 11:45.
And the Germans picked us up on their radar and saw this group of B-24s isolated and separated. And so they sent their Focke-Wulfs and Me-109s up. And there was a heavy cloud cover of altocumulus, so we couldn't see them. And they were on us almost instantly.
And at once, there was a shooting just above us. And within seconds, the first bomber already was falling down, was spinning propellers.
As a young member of the German Luftwaffe, Oskar Bosch was on call the morning of August 3rd, 1944.
The weather was beautiful, and the bombers came in from Italy. We speculated, we never were sure what is their target. And it could be anything, probably Friedrichshafen. And we went on altitude. We bypassed Friedrichshafen to go on high on our altitude of the bombers at about 24,000 feet. So, and then the bombers came in from the south, and we connected, went in position, went through the formation successfully.
So it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, beautiful day, and all of a sudden it seemed like the world exploded.
Sugar Baby's bombardier was George Britton.
The German fighters came up from underneath. There were Me-109s and Focke-Wulfs 190, I believe. And it happened so quickly, I could hardly believe it. They were no longer shooting bullets, but they had sort of rockets that came into the plane.
For me personally, it was like a picnic flight, breakfast flight, you know. Do your thing. It takes only a few seconds, 20 seconds, firing, and then I went down.
Understanding now that I'm in the ball turret, and the attack came, and I was firing my weapons at the aircraft that were attacking us. And so I fired at the fighter aircraft, and that's why I say I saw my tracers go right into the aircraft and saw it start smoking.
The fear always had been the bullets, what tried to keep you away.
All I knew was I felt this tremendous jar, just a shudder.
And I began to swing my guns around, and then I realized the aircraft was shuddering a little bit. So I thought I'd better get up and find out what's going on.
And I remember standing at the rear right window, and I just caught a glimpse of this plane coming at a tremendous speed.
So a 20-millimeter cannon had gone through my turret, crashed through the plexiglass, and a portion of that cannon shell went through my back. And I was trying to communicate and realized I couldn't. So I manually took the turret up, cranked it up, opened the hatch. My parachute was setting beside the turret, and what I saw was a disturbing thing. The aircraft was burning.
I turned around, looked out the right navigator's window, and there I saw the wing. The engines were burning on the wing.
There must have been gasoline coming out of the number 4 engines or number 3 engines, because that was all in flames. The back of the aircraft was burning profusely, just violently.
When the plane goes on fire, you don't have an awful lot of time to get out of it. You have maybe 10 or 15 seconds before the plane loses total control or blows up, and if it blows up, then it's more or less curtains.
The plane started to make a sweeping turn down to the left. With that, I looked from where I was in 24, I looked back, co-pilot were gone.
And I immediately understood that we were in very deep trouble. So I took my chute and I looked back, and our tail gunner, Charles Sellers, came out of his turret and he was pointing like this to me, and I realized he did not have a chute. So I went to the bulkhead to look for a spare chute, which was supposed to have been an aircraft. I'm not blaming anyone, but someone did not put the extra chute there, and there wasn't any. So I went back to see if I could help Charlie Sellers get out of that predicament. And he fell back into the flames, and that's the last I saw him. He was consumed by the fire in the back of the aircraft.
As bombardier, I had the obligation, the responsibility to get the bomb doors open. So I was back at the window, then you have to crawl through the bomb ramp and go up and open the bomb doors, which I did.
And I turned around and opened the door to the nose gunner. Hamilton was in there. First time I met Hamilton was that morning before I get in the plane. And I pounded on his back, he turned his head, and I went like this. Then I turned around. When I turned around, I looked back and somebody jumped, went out the bomb bay door. And I was the last person I saw. Who it was, to this day, I still don't know who it was.
So I took my chute, ran to the bomb bay door, partially attached it, and rolled out. I think I was the last one out of the airplane, and I was suffering from anoxia. I'd been up at that elevation for so long without oxygen. I was very weak, and I remember kind of fainting after I pulled the ripcord. And I realized I was in trouble because I had no knowledge of how to manipulate a parachute. And the Alps, very, very rugged portion of the Alps were streaming up at me.
Over the center of the Alps. You know, it's always a kind of a thing, if you know you have to bail out, you fall right into where will you land. Huh? It's not many good landing places there. Huh?
So I tried to spill my chute, and I got caught on a pinnacle, a large sharp granite peak, and my chute went out like a pendulum. It came back, slammed into the rock surface, and knocked me unconscious. And after coming to, then I realized all of this flooded back into my memory, that the reality of what had happened, the aircraft, the incident of bailing out, and here I am on the top of the Alps mountains in Austria, all alone.
In reality, Lee Engelhorn was far from alone. The skies above Aald and surrounding hamlets were filled with parachutes and burning wreckage. There were no survivors from the first B-24 to hit the ground. The plane crashed into a field just below the village church in Lemuz. Local blacksmith, Anton Hundefund, at age 12, witnessed the fatal explosion along with his father.
It was a beautiful day, not unlike today. I was standing at the Lemuz railway station with my father. It was not uncommon for us to see aircraft over this area.
On
this day, however, I noticed what appeared to be puffs of smoke coming from the guns of both German fighters and American bombers. The B-24 that fell into the field here below the church had the engines on both wings struck by gunfire, and then the burning plane began to spin out of control, crashing into the ground. I didn't see any parachutes come from this plane. The wreckage burned for the next 2 days, with ammunition exploding from time to time, so no one was allowed to go near it until it was safe. I also saw a German fighter crash into the mountains just above the Lemuz Alm. The pilot bailed out, and later we learned that he was injured but not killed. When the burning B-24 was extinguished and no longer a danger, the wreckage was pulled from the site by animals, and the bodies of the dead airmen were placed in bags. About 4 or 5 people from the village thought that these bodies should just be discarded, thrown away because they were the enemy. But most people thought, regardless of who they were human beings, just like our sons and husbands, and deserved a decent burial.
Das ist damals, das ist heute auch wieder anders.
This section of the churchyard at that time had not been consecrated as hallowed ground, and it was here that the church had buried those who were not baptized. During the night, the priest, myself, the church gravedigger, and 2 elderly ladies of the parish made a hole about 6 feet by 6 feet, and it was here that the bodies of the crewmen were buried. We took great care to smooth the ground over afterward because we knew that what we had done was not allowed, and we were afraid the Nazi army would find out. It was from then on a secret, and no one would speak about it. After the war, the bodies were retrieved by the United States, dug up by captured German soldiers, and reburied with honor in France.
Over 50 parachutes dotted the skies above the valley. While a good number landed safely, others were not so lucky. Staff Sergeant and Gunner Arthur Rentz found himself stranded for 2 days on the top of a peak in the Austrian Alps. He was finally reached by Josef Wegscheider, who at 23 was a member of the mountain rescue team based in Innsbruck, some 30 kilometers to the east.
In der Jugend hat man halt irgendeinen Schutz gesucht.
In my youth, I was a fairly good mountain climber, so I joined the mountain rescue team in Innsbruck, which was the capital of Austria at that time. One day we learned that an aircraft had gone down in the mountains above Aald, which was about 30 kilometers from where we were stationed.
Ja, wir haben die Nachricht von
We were informed about the crashes that had taken place in the area, and we were told that there was a survivor stranded in the mountains. So we took our bicycles and made the journey from Innsbruck to see if we could assist. When we arrived, we found the body of pilot Theodore Poole, and due to the rugged terrain, we had no choice except to bury it at the base of the mountain. As we were leaving to return to Innsbruck, a local hunter informed us that we had in fact failed to see the living survivor who was trapped on the rugged and treacherous peak.
Der hat so ein Fernglas gehabt, ein altmodisches.
Our rescue team returned to Innsbruck not only to report our findings, but also to obtain a car, which would allow us to transport the necessary climbing equipment in order to effect a rescue of our trapped survivor, Arthur Rentz. When we found him on top of the peak, he was in surprisingly good condition.
Und ja, dann haben wir zu essen gegeben und zu trinken.
We gave him some food and some water to drink and some schnapps to bolster his courage. During the rescue, there was very little communication between us. At the end, Arthur Rentz thanked us in English, saying only, "Good job, boys." It was years later that we would find out his mother was German and that he spoke the language fluently, but he did not let on for fear of possible repercussions with German troops whom he was most certain to encounter.
Airwald, Austria, once the site of war-torn hostilities, was now to host a reunion for 3 members of Sugar Baby's crew.
Nice to see you. How you doing?
Joseph.
My good friend.
They were worried about you.
Well,
you had a big delay
The plane was late,
an hour late getting to Munich, and then my pilot and my navigator failed me.
Lee Engelhorn was the aircraft's ball turret gunner. His survival from the crash of Sugar Baby was in no way short of miraculous. And now, with Gerd Leitner as guide and his family as witness, Lee was about to revisit a portion of his life some 60 years hence, including the site where he surrendered to officers of the German army, prior to his internment in Stalag Luft 4, where he would stay for the remainder of the war.
We will see the farmhouse where you have given up.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's just, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And we also will have a look at the family. Perhaps still is one alive, and they will recognize you.
I think the fear that I felt was
terrible.
really when you saw the flak up ahead.
It's hard for people to understand what that was like.
Beautiful.
Okay, we are going for modern art.
We are going for a special seminar in modern art, and Gert Leitner is going to be the professor who's going to educate us.
For Joseph Spontak, George Britton, and Lee Engelhorn,
Yes, look at that.
this would be the first time they'd seen Sugar Baby since August 3rd, 1944.
How do you like it?
Beautiful.
Never thought it. One of those frames I brought down for Joseph, and I think he took it back to the States.
This is our airplane. Come on.
Here, I'll take pictures of the guys.
Oh, it's crashing.
Right.
George,
And
you stay here.
Stay there, Dad.
Got my camera there.
What do you want me to do?
We're going to stand here. We're going to picture dear art, piece of art, front
Is
wheel.
this modern art?
Yeah, this is very modern. Can't you tell?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I've never understood how anybody who was intelligent enough to become a professor of history and geography and I don't know what else could be so stupid to have gotten to a bald turret. I just never figured it out.
You know, legitimately, when you were attached to the ball turret, the specs called for a person who was 5'6" or 5'7". Cooper and I don't know if I told you this story, and we both went through radio training.
Yes.
And we came to the crew, and a mistake was made. One of us should have not been assigned to that crew. So instead of assigning one of us, they said, flip a coin, one will go to a turret, and one will go to the radio. Cooper went to the radio. I went to the turret.
Oh my God. Didn't I bomb some cows or something?
I took the heat for that, baby. They were on me, really.
Because you didn't photograph it.
Oh, yeah, I was handling that big camera on the...
Yeah. And you took a picture of Troy hitting the cow?
No, it was sheep.
Sheep.
Yeah, and we had
sheep.
these black powder bombs. He laid them right in on the sheep.
Yeah, but George, you weren't supposed to do that. We were up in the Badlands at the time.
Joe, we survived.
Yeah, no, when I really gave a report on it, the head navigator there, you know, at the
60 years after the fact, a commemoration of the battle above Aald was held through the efforts of Keith Bullock and Gerd Leitner. Adversaries of the past, Oscar Bosch and Willy Unger of the Luftwaffe joined George Britton and Joseph Spontak of the USAF. Together they recalled the Battle of August 3, 1944, and shared in a unique sense of friendship and camaraderie. The conclusion of this elaborate and well-attended celebration revealed a permanent monument dedicated to the lives of those who took part, placed in the village of Aald, Austria.
The whole site is here the Brendel car, and this is the Brendel car crash, yes. One of the 8, as you know. Mm-hmm. And you can see the little cross, perhaps, on the little hill over there. And this is where the body of Sellers, he was the rear gunner of this aircraft, was buried. One of the landing gear, I think it is the left one. It is just over there, about 500 meters from here to the west. So this has broken off before. And another part of the aircraft I found over there, this was the elevator, parts of the elevator. This was found there, and also a part of the armor plates for the rear gunner. This is still lying over there. It's now under the snow, but still there. So it might have been that the plane broke in parts up there, but the main part and all the engines and all this is on the main there, on the main part there.
Since the summer of 1944, the remains of Sugar Baby have dotted the mountainside, and season after season are a constant reminder of one destructive day during World War II.
Now here you can see
That's
the landing gear. Yeah, I think the landing gear is still in a very good condition. I think you could use it in a P-24 right now again.
I know it still shines.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is one of the oxygen bottles. Yeah. They were all painted yellow. There's some wiring and all this stuff around. See, there's more exhaust over there. And you can find a lot of small pieces also when you have a look in there, like ammunition sometimes.
Since the mid-1960s, Gerd Leitner has been returning to the Brendel car crash site for research and in honor of those whose lives were lost on August 3, 1944. He and Keith Bullock, a local historian, have memorialized this day, placing plaques at each site of the downed B-24s. The Liberator Sugar Baby first struck the Brendel car here, where its left landing gear has remained ever since. The plane continued to follow its inevitable path, coming to rest at the bottom of this small valley.
This is the pilot seat here, this one.
Here we go. This might have been a window or some kind of opening.
Yeah. One of the windows, so it must be part of the fuselage.
Yes, absolutely.
Part of a flag quest. So let's move up to the cross. Yeah. You must see those. See, it's melted, light and aluminium.
Aluminum.
Yeah, all over here.
Really?
Yeah.
So who brings these candles up, do you think?
People, I think, from the village, they will do it. Huh? Oh, here we have a bomb release unit. Please.
Oh.
Here it is.
Oh, okay.
See, this is the bomb. They had, I think, about 48 of them. See, and the bombs they hung in there. And then they just could release it by electronic and they fell down.
Okay, so it separated and they dropped.
Yes, and they dropped, yes. Yeah. But this is a bomb release unit. You can take it if you like, because there are many of them. And this says August 3rd, 1944, 8 B-24 Liberator heavy bombers of the 15th USAF based at Pantanella in southern Italy were shot down by fighters of the German Air Force over the area of the Fernpass, one of which crashed near to this cross on the Brendel car. This P-24 was from the 465 Bomber Group 780 Bomber Squadron. From these 8 aircrafts crewed by 79 airmen, 30 lost their lives on this day. And the crew of the Brendel car crashed. The pilot was the First Lieutenant Lawrence R. Crane. The co-pilot was Robert Kurtz. The navigator, Second Lieutenant Joseph Spontak. The bombardier, George H. Britton. The engineer was Leonard Bracken. Then engineer and gunner, this was the Anthony Szesowski. Then the radio operator, John S. Cooper. Then staff sergeant Leland T. Engelhorn, gunner. And another gunner, Lawrence Hamilton, killed in action. And the gunner, Charles F. Sellers, killed in action. A placket like this is on all eight crash sites of the Americans. We didn't put any plackets on the German side because we do not know exactly where they crashed. I only know one, but I don't know the others. So we decided we have to do it for our friends in America. Yeah. From here you can see another crash site. You see the sand on there is a cloud in, and then on the left side you see a sand. And there's another crash site. The aircraft just went into the rock. The crew of the Wampe de Schroven crashed. The pilot was Second Lieutenant Dodd. The co-pilot, Second Lieutenant Leonard W. Matter. The bombardier was First Lieutenant Richard McDonald. The engineer, Staff Sergeant William S. Hooper. Radio operator, John Kostick. Gunner, Sergeant Willis L. Prince. Gunner, Sergeant John W. Lemley, gunner Staff Sergeant William R. Campbell, and gunner
George doesn't like to be known as a hero.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I was no hero.
We were conscientious objectors, but we went anyway.
I go out and consciously win.
I think the only thing heroic, in my opinion, I've thought back on it, and I wasn't really angry at Adolf Hitler, to be honest with you. I didn't have those feelings at 19 years of age. I really wasn't aware of a lot what was going on. But I think the heroic part was after you've flown your first mission, that goddamn fear that you had, just be able to persevere. That was the heroic part.
The real heroes are lying under crosses in France.
Right, that's right.
Those are the real heroes.
Yeah.
They gave up the maximum, the ultimate. The rest of us did our job that we were trained to do.
The mountain is called Grünstein.
Grünstein.
Grünstein, yeah.
Well, and go look around and find your parachute up there somewhere.
No, he has taken it.
Oh, you took it down?
Yeah, he took it.
Yeah, I took it down. I slept it, rolled in it at night.
And then you walk this area here.
Yes.
This is where you went. Once you had to cross this road. You had to cross it, otherwise you never have gone to Strad.
I don't recall that, but I'm sure I did.
And I got down to the timberline, and I realized my journey from that point on would be very dangerous. So I walked into a little tiny village, and this was a little village called Strad. And there was an orchard there, and I thought if I could steal some fruit out of the orchard, I might be able to make it a few more days. But some children saw me, and I frightened them, and they ran, and I realized the game is up. So I went to the nearest home, knocked on the door.
Good, find the place?
This is it right here, Dad.
Is this it?
Through Gerd Leitner's research and diligence, Lee returned to Strad. It was here that he met Mariana Richter, who reintroduced him to the farmhouse where he ended his 16 days in the Austrian wilderness.
But it really was this house, and the apple trees have been around there.
So this is the door I knocked on.
Yes. Ja, ist das die einzige Tür vor dem Haus, oder gibt es noch eine zweite? Hinten auch noch, ne?
Ja, hinten ist auch eine Tür, ja, genau.
No, it might be that you knocked on the other door. We will have a look around.
So, and I was desperate, getting very hungry. I was loose now for 16 days, and very weak and a little delirious.
Ja, gehen wir vielleicht ein, durch hinten ist das Haus.
This is, I'm sorry, this is a very emotional moment.
Ja, schauen wir jetzt, es ist für ihn natürlich ein äußerst bewegender Eindruck, weil er ja da, hat sich sein Leben lang gewünscht, dass er da wieder mal zurückkehren kann, wo er aber aufgenommen wird. This is just like it has been 60 years before.
Es war immer so.
Yeah.
This building was here?
No.
I don't.
There the apple trees had been, you know.
An elderly couple were in the farmhouse, took me in, and to this day, I'm very grateful to them. They were congenial, they were helpful, they realized I was an American airman. Of course, we couldn't communicate very well, at all, as a matter of fact, but they realized that I was an American airman, and they were aware of the air battle over Lamuse.
Oh, yes.
This was the kitchen.
Und hier war eine Tür in die Stube.
There was a door to the other room, she said. But this is the original kitchen you've been in. Yeah?
This is a glimmer of recognition.
Yeah.
And we sat down at a table, and the lady fed me some milk.
Ja, er sagt, sie sind noch an den Tisch gesetzt und hat eine Art Milch gekriegt, eine gestockte Milch, hat er gemeint, was er hat nicht genau gekannt. What else did they give you?
Well, they gave me that, and then the old elderly gentleman gave me a cigar to smoke.
Eine Zigarre hat er sogar gekriegt.
They called the Austrian police, and the police came and picked me up and arrested me. That's my beginning of my experience as a prisoner.
I want her to know that this means a lot to me.
A German lieutenant came down a few days later, and it took me back to Germany on the train. Ultimately then went to a processing center and assigned to 2 different prison camps.
During his visit, Lee discovered that Frau Richter is the adopted daughter of Josef and Valeria Kohler, and today resides next door to the family home.
She asked us whether we would not take a drink from her. I think we should do it.
Well, sure.
Yeah, it's in the next house. She lives in the next house. Okay. Yeah,
You remember that kitchen, Dad?
Yes. You know, it's
We were freed
by the American infantry, 104th Infantry, on April 25th in southern Germany.
Så var's früher.
I've been relating to this incident of my being here at Aald almost every week of my life. So it was an emotional, traumatic experience. And especially when we went to the home, talked to the lady and went into the room, I came very close to breaking down. Very close. Tears were in my eyes, I can tell you that. And I was kind of choking, trying to hold my emotions because I was a bit embarrassed being in that situation. And I think I can put it behind me, finally. Because I've covered the ground, I've been here, and I'll have wonderful memories about doing the things we did today.
The village of Straad, Austria, like the hills of Pantanella, Italy, show little sign of the sacrifice and honor that existed here in 1944. In another time, crews of duty-bound young men landed here in force. The airbase they knew as home is gone. All that was built by the American forces was removed at the conclusion of the conflict. What remains today of the runways that once inhabited this land are fields of wheat. A small village named Laconia is now located in one corner of the old airbase. Children play in the courtyard, happy to state their names in English to the occasional visitor.
My name is Angela.
They ride their bikes past a spot where once hung a plaque in memory to the members of the 464th and 465th. It has long since disappeared. Few of the townspeople know that a base even existed, but those that do remember, such as Antonio Tessa, welcomed the infrequent veteran with open arms. The character of the people who inhabit Pantanella now is imbued by their friendship and warmth. It was an old world they inherited, and a congenial nature they offer that has grown from life in this now untroubled place. However, in the rubble of these hills can be found small indications of the Air Force encampment. Relics, memorabilia, artifacts.
Watch your step, there's a lot of junk here. You didn't even look at that spot. Well, that's the thing.
Occasionally, a more significant reminder is seen of the lives that were lived in this place. Murals somewhat protected over the years by a now deteriorating roof are fading into remnants of another time. But mostly the hills have returned to vineyards and olive groves. Buildings commandeered by the 15th for their command have been restored to their original purpose, the agricultural community. Two hills remain. Members of both the 464th and 465th left a part of themselves here. Sometimes, the former airman is a bit confused trying to find a landmark. Most of what he is looking for is gone.
And I think that there's a hill over there too, and I think this is probably the hill where most of the squadron was stationed. But boy, I'm still not oriented. Look at this.
Now this is it, yeah.
That says 1945. 465th, you can see that.
A memorial to the 15th lies broken in pieces next to a church built with money donated by the men of the squadrons.
Oh, that's too bad. I wonder who broke that up.
I would like to call to order this year's 780th and 782nd Bomb Squadron Memorial Service.
In this newer age, crewmen hold reunions and seem by nature to remember the good times more than the bad. Yet their purpose now is to remember the friends they lost as boys and mourn those who now disappear with an ever-increasing regularity. Stoically, inured by experience.
I don't think I sacrificed really anything. I felt like with a lot of pride.
It's hard for me to answer a question about what it cost me because I survived. The guys that paid the big price were the ones who didn't live through it.
It was a rightful war, and I should have been in it, and I was in it. And I don't feel that I sacrificed anything. Probably did me some good.
From the top of Pantanella Hill, a tractor works the field, preparing the soil for a new growing season. And as the sun begins to set, the breeze blows dry ground into a trail of dust. Throughout the hills and valley of this section of southern Italy, on this day, and more importantly in 44 and 45, hard work was done. And in the end, earned at no small price, there is peace.